Hello, masterminds. I feel much more energetic today, having slept early last night and sleeping in to like noon, 1 o'clock. I want to sleep at an acceptable time again, so we're gonna have story time now. Before you can take life seriously, you have to go through a time of confusion and hardship. In the last story time, I was basically describing the last stage of grief, acceptance. In this story time, I want to focus on the first two stages of grief, denial and anger. I first learned my parents were going to divorce in September of 2004. Prior to that, I always noticed my parents had relationship problems and they got through them. Except this time, I just held on to the idea that they would stay together in the end, fix their problems. That hope kept me oblivious, clueless to much of what was going on. I remember one day in particular, my older brother, I think my older sister was there, and my mom were having a family talk about what was happening, and I witnessed so much pain, and then it came out of me, the pain, and I didn't want to feel that again, so I held on to that hope even more, hiding from the facts. I kept myself in denial by focusing on school and gaming. Soon enough, my dad was not part of my daily life anymore, and I became an angry person. I mentioned in the last story time that before I started 6th grade, I was excited to have a female teacher again. The reason for my excitement is that I hated my male 5th grade teacher. I hated him for being a father figure when the wounds were still fresh. My anger towards him isn't entirely his fault. If you are a teacher, you inevitably take on a parental role to some degree. However, my 5th grade teacher reminded me a lot of my dad. I know or remember them as alpha males. So, when it came to physical education, I don't like outdoor sports, and so when I was forced to play and compete, I hated my teacher for that. Especially because I was being graded on it. A standardized education system is fucking garbage. Because I wanted to learn at my own pace, which I was, whether that was faster or slower than others in the class, I was deeply annoyed, frustrated even, when I had to learn at my teacher's pace. He'd constantly pick on me to participate because much of the time I was in my own head, thinking about other things and not paying attention. I didn't want to pay attention because either I knew what was being taught, or I thought I would catch up on my own time, because it's hard to learn when you're distracted. I don't think he ever found out what I was going through. He graded me as an average student. I had a lot of 2s and 3s out of 4s on my report cards. Realizing that I was an average student in his eyes, I had no problem giving him a taste of my anger. It felt good to practice sarcasm, dark humor, shit-talking, especially behind his back. Looking back, I'm glad he was my 5th grade teacher. He forced me to deal with my anger, and in dealing with my anger, I learned to treat myself better. And how do I treat myself better? I learn even more. Because of him, I learned to be rebellious. I learned to respect women. I'm a gentleman after all. And I learned that the American education system sucks for people like me. As you can imagine, back then, while I was angry at school, I was also angry at home. I was angry at my dad for leaving. The anger I can feel at him today is much different than the anger I felt back then. And in the next story time, I will tell you how I dealt with that anger. Until the next story time, go learn about the bargaining and depression stages of grief. Alright? Alright. I will catch you in the next vlog, masterminds. Be smart for your heart.